we're going to be talking about the Great Resignation, and that is a subject about which many an article, much ink has been spilled, and another in the saga was written uncommonly last week by the resignee herself. Robin Hammondtree is a graphic designer, and she was formerly a senior instructional designer at the University of Alabama. She said that she asked her HR rep if she could work remotely for a few weeks, and as she did for nearly all of 2020, so that she didn't bring COVID home and kill her father, who has a rare form of leukemia. And this is like a super reasonable request, right? She said that she asked to work remotely for a few weeks. I mean, we all see what's happening around us right now. I mean, the surge with Omicron is insane. We are seeing more tests, more positive tests daily than we ever have since the beginning of the pandemic. There's a bit of a silver lining in that maybe, hopefully, we'll see as we get a bit further out, because, of course, deaths and hospitalizations are a lagging indicator. But by all accounts, it seems that Omicron is more mild than Delta. So, but the positive tests that are coming back are just insane. And so it is not unreasonable at all to want to wait out this wave at home, especially in an environment where you can do that. Like, if you have a job that can be done from home and you want to work from home while we see more COVID cases than we ever have through the entirety of the pandemic, then you should be able to do that. That's not crazy. That's super, super reasonable. And they said no. They said no, in short. They did this also, in addition to saying no, to rub salt in the wounds. They did it a full week after her initial request, and at 4:30 p.m. on the last day before the break, so that she couldn't reply until she was supposed to be in the office in the new year. Holy crap. That's such passive aggressive. Why would you not give her a chance to respond to what you're saying? And so they in short said no, and she in short quit. And kudos to her. I know that took a lot of courage. In her opinion piece in AL.com, it was titled "Quitting Job at UA, a Difficult Choice with No Option to Work from Home." She mentions that workers, especially women, have had to make these sorts of impossible decisions long before the pandemic, having to balance being a caretaker and a career. And, in her specific instance, her and her husband are the caretakers for her father, who has this, rare form of leukemia that makes him particularly susceptible to the coronavirus because he is immunocompromised, right? So this is, she is her father's caretaker, and having to choose between that and putting herself at risk of catching the coronavirus and bringing it to her home where her father lives, that's an impossible choice. And women throughout the ages have had to make impossible choices similar to this. Am I going to be able to have a job, put food on the table, or am I going to have to stay home because we can't afford childcare? Or because my parents are elderly and they need somebody to look after them 24/7, and so I can't work, and I can't afford to put them in a home. I can't afford a resident nurse, a home nurse aide. All of these things, these impossible decisions that women have to make, especially men too, but women especially have to make between caretaking and a career. And she closes by saying that it does not have to be this way. It does not have to be this way for the thousands of families in the same position that she is in. We can and we should do better. We shouldn't just applaud people for putting their families first, which we should applaud people for putting their families first. That's, hooray, that's good. But we should build workplaces that allow them to do so without, there are all these, like she says, impossible choices between, putting your family first and your job. And that's just like, that shouldn't be a choice that you have to make, especially where it's not super, she's not fabricating something, right? I mean, she's like a knowledge employee. She doesn't have to be there. If she were like an iron worker or something, and she had to, of course, like if you're an iron worker, you like physically have to be there to make the product. Your job is to make a product. That's different. But where you don't have to, you shouldn't have to if it's going to put your life in danger. And so we should build workplaces that allow them to do so, and I couldn't agree more. And policies like this, not allowing workers to work from home where it's possible to work from home, they serve no purpose in the operation of a business. And in fact, they can be directly harmful. They can have a harmful effect on the productivity of a business. But despite that, bosses in all sorts of workplaces have these policies. I was talking to Maggie yesterday about a policy that the barista that we'll be talking to shortly, about a policy that they instituted at their Starbucks location, that there was no rational productivity or any sort of justification for. What was the justification for it? Why did they do it? Why? To discipline their workers, to make them stay in line, to make sure that they don't get any pesky ideas about them having good suggestions, about them being valuable, or being able to run things themselves. Because those are dangerous ideas. And our workplaces absolutely don't have to be this way. That's the way that they are. There are 6% of workers in the private sector are union. Something like 15%, 20% are union in the public sector. So for, 90% of workers in America, this is the way that their workplaces are run. Their workplaces are run by the boss with no input from the employee. But our workplaces absolutely don't have to be this way. They don't have to be run by the boss and the boss alone, and we should, and we can make them better. And we can do that by unionizing. It's difficult, but it's essential. And we can't rely on anybody but ourselves. The politicians, they certainly haven't been there for us. And, so let's say, I'm hearing you in my head, skeptical listener. You're saying, Jake, you're a union talk radio host. You're a union member. You're a union partisan. You always think unions are the answer. And to that I say, yes. But I have reasons. I always have reasons. I don't ever not give a reason for thinking that unions are the answer when they are. So I'm going to do the same here. Why would having a union in your workplace alleviate this issue that workers like Robin Hammondtree are having all across the country? Why would having a union in your workplace alleviate this issue? Why would it make you better able to fight it? I'll tell you. In a union workplace where you've got a contract that you and your coworkers, your sisters and brothers on the job, have drafted, have negotiated with the boss, that you have voted on to accept, that you enforce through workplace actions and making sure that the boss abides by the term of the contract. In a workplace like that, changes in your working conditions, changes in your contract language are all mandatory subjects of bargaining. What does that mean? Mandatory subjects of bargaining. That sounds like lingo. It means that they've got to consult you. They can't just do something because they feel like it. They don't have total, unilateral, dictatorial, tyrannical control over the workplace. Where you have a union contract, you have rights. You have some amount of control over what happens. Does that mean that they are always going to accept everything that you say? No. Does that mean that you're not going to have to fight when you bargain over these mandatory subjects of bargaining? No, of course not. You're going to have to fight. But it means that your boss cannot unilaterally, without negotiation, implement policies like return to work or anything else for that matter. So if this situation had played out in a union environment, you would have seen the employer and the union and the workers negotiating over the terms of the return to work. She could have made her accommodation request known to the bargaining committee, which would be elected from the rank and file of her bargaining unit. Hell, she could have even been on the bargaining committee, right? The employer would have had to consider this request not as a request from a single worker that can be approved or denied with basically no ramifications, that is a request from one worker out of hundreds that doesn't really matter. They have to consider this request as part of broader negotiations between them, between management, and the entire workforce. You've got the whole workforce backing you up in these negotiations. So that is why having a union in your workplace is going to be beneficial. You actually write the policies that you work under, and that's so important. And so I think that anybody listening can understand that, right? That it makes sense. And it's good. Like, people have Alabamians, Southerners, like, we like to consider ourselves rebels or something, with the Confederate flag. That's not rebellion. That's not the how you're actually going. But people have, I believe, across the country and in the South in particular, we have a democratic impulse. We believe that we know how to run our lives, and that extends to the workplace. And so that's why having a union in your workplace is good, and being a part of that collective organization will help improve your working conditions, and it will make you better able to fight these fights as they happen, and it will make you better able to make sure that your workplace is not one where women have to make these impossible choices. How do we get there? You have to organize. And I know it's tough, and there are some people out there like her that, like, maybe it just literally isn't an option. And if it's not safe, then I'm not telling you, of course, to stay at your job at the risk of your life or your family's life to organize a union. I'm not telling you to do that. But if it is safe, then you will be far more likely to make your life better organizing at your current workplace, making it more democratic, writing the rules yourself, than you are going to be quitting your job where your boss is a tyrannical dictator, and then looking for a job where maybe you can find a benevolent dictator. I mean, if you can even find such a place, right? But even if you find such a place, then the same problems can arise, because the nature of a dictator is not determined by the adjective that you put in front of it. Like, it's illegitimate that they're a dictator. Whether they're benevolent or tyrannical is almost immaterial. I mean, of course, a benevolent dictator is going to be better than a tyrannical dictator, but they don't have a right to be your dictator. And so you're going to have a better time where you can enforce some democratic say over your working conditions than quitting your job and looking for that, diamond in the rough, that benevolent dictator. because we shouldn't have dictators. We shouldn't have dictators. And so join a union, find a union, organize, get the boss off your back. Support for this program also comes from the Iron Workers Local 477. So if you are looking for contractors with lower than average EMR and TRIR, they tell me that if you need to know what those mean, then you will. Or if you need to supplement a workforce at any level for any amount of time, short or long term, if you need iron workers that come trained and certified at no extra cost, or if you need workers from superintendent down to general laborer and you're looking to start work on a project, or you're unhappy with your current contractor situation, you need to call my friend Jeb Miles with the Iron Workers Local 477. They only work with the best in the business, vetted contractors, and can do all kinds of jobs from roofing to steel and bridge erection, from welding to heavy rigging, from structural repairs to machinery alignment, and much more. They supply manpower on 4 of the 5 largest projects in North Alabama, so you know they're legit. If you need good quality, safe, efficient, diligent, and knowledgeable workers on your job, then you need the Iron Workers Local 477. Call Jeb Miles at 256-383-3334 or via email at local477@bellsouth.net, and make sure you tell them that you heard about them on the Valley Labor Report.